Welcome to another episode of Principles of Management. Today we begin looking at the last major function of management. We talked about the four functions: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Well, today we begin looking at controlling. And remember, controlling, when we talk about controlling, we're not talking about controlling people, we talk about resources. Why do we control things? Well, we control them because we need to adapt to change, right? Customers' expectations change. We have to control things. We have a coronavirus going around. How do we adapt to those changes? We need to structure our business. If we're an airline, we're going to make changes. We're going to change flights. We're going to change who's on what schedule. We're going to do a lot of changes. If you're in a restaurant, we have to change our hours and things like that. So there's a lot of work that gets done relative to environmental change. And I don't just mean environmental like viruses. The customer expectations can change. Customers may demand less meat or meat alternatives and things like that. So we need to be able to adapt to those things. Or customers' expectations may change in terms of how fast they want delivery. We also have to control looking for error. Errors are expensive. When we talk about quality management, there's a lot of costs to bad products, not just the fact that you get returns, but there's customer support issues, there's reworking, there's warranty costs, there's customers that get dissatisfied. So those errors can pile up in terms of costs. And businesses have become very complex. We'll talk about some of that. A lot of products, a lot of parts, a lot of customers, a lot of distribution channels. And a big aspect of control is minimizing costs. Today, to be competitive, it's important to be low cost. Now, one thing I really want to emphasize here is measuring. If you're going to control something, you have to measure it first. And a lot of students, I find a big reluctance to get quantitative and don't think about measuring, but you need to measure things if you're going to control it. You're going to need to count stuff. You're going to need to be able to keep track of things. It's critical to be able to measure what's going on. If you can't measure, you can't control something. And that often is a problem with businesses. They don't measure or are unable to measure, and they get themselves in huge trouble. Now we can control by area. Physical. A good example of physical is inventory. We control financial. How much are we spending on different things? We control our information. This is a huge thing the last few years, right? As we get into data mining and controlling information and hacking, people hacking into databases and stealing information. When I say control staff, I don't mean controlling people in terms of bossing them around. I mean in terms of how many we have and where are they. We have strategic control. How are we meeting our strategic objectives? Are we getting enough sales out of Europe and things like that? Are the different areas performing? Is manufacturing reducing costs? Are R&D coming up with new products? Are sales meeting their targets? Operational, day-to-day, are we manufacturing the things that we need? How are our sales day-to-day? Are we shipping what we need to do? Overall finances, how does our budget look? What are our revenues? Where are we doing in budget? This is a lot of managerial accounting is in here. All management is responsible for controlling. In your area, we'll get into this in a minute, but if you ever are a manager, you will be required to control certain resources. And when we talk about control, we talk about a controller. This is the head accountant in a business. They obviously control a lot of what we talked about in terms of financial aspects. Managerial accounting is a big piece of this. Now, how do we control? Well, first we establish, it's kind of a buzzword, control standards. That's the things that we want to meet. How many parts per million can we expect in errors? What is the mean time between failure in our products? What's our budget for travel, and living. Those are the control standards. And again, they have to be measured. And then you're going to measurable, and then we measure against them. Did I say that you can't fix a problem if you don't measure it? Remember that. Then, after you measured it, you compare your results to the control standard. You may have to fix something, right? Sometimes even success can be problems. You can have too much of a good thing sometimes, and that can lead to problems as well. You might have, sales might be good, but then you might have shortages of things. So it's important to measure all aspects of the business. Now, when we measure in terms of operations, there's three kind of points where we can measure. Preliminary control is when things come into the business. So if I'm making a car, is my steel in good condition? Is my high quality? Is my rubber or my tires in good quality? I check as things come in, because it's a lot better to find the problem early on before you make the product that you got a problem rather than later. Costs look like this. If I plot, I'm drawing this left-handed with a mouse. The cost to fix something goes up like this over time. Early on, you catch it, inputs, you can fix it, right? You make the product, well, you might have to fix something. Once it gets out to the customer, the costs go way up. Think of cars and recalls and things like that. It's tough to have those problems later on. So you want to catch them early on as possible. Catch them before they come into business. Then we have screening control. That's as things go through the business. Don't wait till the end. Check at each step along the way. You're building a car. Am I building it right? Are the pieces all correct? In Japan, they'd have a red button on some assembly lines that if something goes wrong, you push that red button and it stops everything. Why? You want to correct the problems as early as possible for exactly the reason that I showed when I was drawing that horrible graph. And post-action control. Take a look at your final product and check it. Does it meet the standards that I want? Is the paint quality good? Is it packaged right? Does it taste right? Does it look good? We've got a video of people on a cruise line, a chef on a cruise line, and in the restaurants, they're delivering food. Well, before the food goes out to the customer, it has to match the picture of what the food is supposed to look like. That's post-action control. You can have screening control, taste it along the way. You can check to make sure your food is fresh coming in. So check that your food is fresh. Just test that it's tasting good, that it's looking good, and then check at the final end, does it look good before it goes to the customer.